Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
To these Ivy League schools, this is the eventual track that you will end up here. You will end up either a full-fledged agent or an asset. I don't trust any of them, to be honest. As a matter of fact, my default is not to trust them if they went to these schools. But anyway, I digress. Let's keep watching, you.
Down, right? And then Fred Burton says, how may I ask, is this center in Houston allowed to operate and why hasn't it been closed down? I will pose this question to the FBI, Texas Rangers, Congress, and the governor. These are the type of groups or individuals, people that these guys have access to. And they clearly had it in their agenda to use certain, what they felt was dirt against Yasir Qadhi in order to try to manipulate him for their own personal agenda, okay? Very clear. This is what they're saying. This is not, at this point, conspiratorial. Now, whether or not they were successful into getting to Yasir Qadhi out of, I don't know, bribing him with money or basically manipulating him because of, and pulling the strings because of certain dirt they had on him, we don't know that for sure. But in the end, they got what they wanted out of this guy, a so-called de-radicalization effect. This bringing forward modernist Islam forward, right? Casting doubt on the Quran and the Sunnah, and trying to integrate Muslims into Western society. This is what Yasir Qadhi has been doing over the past 15 years. So one wonders if they got him or not. But even if it's not that case, maybe they just nudged him in the direction that they wanted, and he wound up going that way on his own. But nevertheless, they're very happy, these intelligence agencies, for what Yasir Qadhi is preaching and the things that he's been involved in. Now, let me just show you guys who some of these individuals are. So you saw the name Fred Burton. This is Fred Burton's official website. Former special agent and New York Times bestselling author Fred Burton. Fred Burton is a former police officer, special agent, and New York Times bestselling author. He served on the front lines of high-profile investigations like the hunt for and arrest of Ramzi Youssef, the mastermind behind the World Trade Center bombing, the 1988 planned crash PAK-1 that killed U.S. Ambassador Arnold Ratfel and Pakistani President Mohammed Zia-ul-Haq, and the search for Americans kidnapped by Hezbollah in Beirut, Lebanon. So on and on. This guy is a very well-established government agent, special agent of the U.S. government. Okay, and he's publishing on his own website. So this is not conspiracy.
Okay, I just wanted to say something here at this point, because you got to understand something, how the U.S. was doing their tactics during the Cold War, right? So they did a lot of things that were called false flag operations, where they would essentially set up some sort of terrorist something or the other, blame somebody else, and use it as a pretense to attack somebody else's country. So, for example, Pearl Harbor, the Japanese didn't attack Pearl Harbor. It was their own U.S. military that attacked Pearl Harbor, pretending to be Japanese as a pretext to enter into World War II, because U.S. had nothing to do with World War II, but they wanted to enter into World War II at this time. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. We have other ones, like, of course, 9/11. And those of y'all who remember 9/11, you know very well what happened with the wider immigrant community. You know, hijabs suddenly fell off and beards got shaved. And you know what I mean? These people was running scared. And all of a sudden, this is the same time that Hamza Yusuf went from this fiery speaker, fiery against the U.S. government, to, oh, you know, Islam means peace. And then all of a sudden, everybody talked about Islam means peace. That's when Islam started meaning peace, after 9/11. I challenge you to find any speaker before 9/11 talking about Islam means peace. I challenge you. Right? But anyways, I digress. Nowadays, the tactics are way cheaper. They cost a lot less, and they don't really require much, because subversion nowadays is done through the internet. It's done through the algorithm. And if you look at the 2016 US election, when Donald Trump won, the Russian government admitted openly that they were using and leveraging Facebook as a means to garner support for Trump, particularly amongst Black voters. They admitted this. So anybody now who is involved in any type of social media, which is the whole point of this whole live today, we're going to get into that. You are exposing yourself to being, brainwashed by the same folks that are owning these platforms, because the platforms are about to get very hostile very fast. This is why we're doing this live today. But I digress. Let's keep watching, you.
At all. Okay. Now, what else? What about Kamran Bukhari? Who is this individual who is exchanging emails and saying that he can get to Yasir Qadhi? Who is this guy? Okay, we'll see here. Kamran Bukhari is vice president of Middle Eastern and South Asian affairs at Stratfor, which is where these emails came from that were leaked. And I believe that Fred Burton is the vice president of this. Okay, of the entire agency, that is. A leading geopolitical and intelligence consulting firm based in Austin, Texas. Mr. Bukhari is a distinguished scholar and expert in Middle Eastern and South Asian affairs. He has given briefings to the US and Canadian governments on important geopolitical issues in the Islamic world and played a fundamental role in shaping Stratford's knowledge base in the region. And it continues on and on about who he is. So this is well known. These guys are not like some random people that we're just making up. Now, who was this Abdul Muttalib that the emails mentioned they can use his example to get to Yasir Qadhi? Now we'll see here, this is an article published by Muslim Matters in 2010. What do you know? Just some 5 or 6 months later after those emails, guys, because that was from February of 2010, right? So just some months later, Yasir Qadhi is publishing this article, The Lure of Radicalism and Extremism Amongst Muslim Youth. Now what do we find here? He says, this academic at the luncheon was not the only one struggling with the question. A recent congressional hearing also tackled this same issue. And of course, this was not the first time that I, myself, meaning Yasir Qadhi, had to confront this very question. It was especially driven home after someone with whom I had only briefly interacted, right? And he mentions who here? Abdul Muttalib, right? That's the same individual that's mentioned in emails. The now infamous underwear bomber turned radical and tried to blow up innocent men, women, and children, right? So he was involved in an attempted terrorist attack. Omar's transformation provides an excellent case study that can and should be studied further to shed light on the question of radicalism. And this short essay makes a first humble attempt at doing just that. I remember Omar as a shy introvert who attended an intensive retreat, the Ilm Summit, sponsored by Al Maghrib Institute in Houston, Texas, in the summer of 2008. I was among 10 instructors at that retreat. Omar was in fact so quiet and shy that I almost felt obliged to engage him in small talk, asking him mundane questions about where he lived and what he was studying. And that was about the extent of my interaction with him. Never once did he raise his hand in class to ask a question or seek any advice or share any concerns or confront me on any subject. It appears that the lack of communication or socializing was not limited to the two of us. Rather, it seemed that other students at the retreat had the same experience. They didn't remember anything significant about him except his nonchalant, quiet presence. In fact, my encounter with him had been so brief and dull that when I saw his pictures being paraded on every website and news magazine cover in December of 2009, I didn't even recognize him until someone alerted me via email that this was the same Omar who had been at the Al-Maghrib retreat. Never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that someone as shy and socially introverted as Omar would have attempted to blow up a plane by stuffing his underwear with explosives. So,
okay, so the gist of this reading the story here is to show that this was leverage. It's just basically insinuating that this is leverage against Yasir Qadhi, this particular student, right? I want to tell you a story around the same time, or maybe a little bit earlier, about Dr. Bilal Phillips. Now, Bilal Phillips, he's like a legend in the Dawah back in the day, right? And Spubs and them started rising up, right? Spubs and them, they basically took the internet by storm. We've told the story many times on this channel, right? But the reason why Spubs garnered a stranglehold on the Dawah is because they were the first one to go out on the internet and stuff, right? When the internet started coming out. So they started putting their stuff on the websites and stuff. So they're the only ones that are putting stuff out in the English language in terms of Dawah on their website. Long story short, they came out against Dr. Bilal Phillips. And they started saying that Dr. Bilal Phillips was an extremist. And they gave this lecture, all right? I was there at the time where it was Sheikh Ubaid al-Jabari who was speaking. And after Sheikh Ubaid spoke, he had found all of your spub elite. You had your, whatchamacallit, Abu Khadija and Amjad Freak and all these guys. They started speaking right after the Sheikh, right? Bilal Davis. And they all said, and this shows that Bilal Phillips is this and this and that and blah, 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 right? I was there live when it took place, right? Long story short, eventually, Bilal Phillips gets labeled as an extremist. He gets labeled as an extremist, and he can't come back to Canada, okay? And not only that, any masjid that invites Dr. Bilal Phillips to their mosque will lose their charitable status. All this is real. Y'all could look it up. Go look it up right now on the internet. Y'all got Google. Remember, we are the first ones here to say that whole Spubs project was an infiltration project. There's not a single black Da'i in that time period, except that they refuted them. All of them. The only ones that they didn't refute are the ones that were part and parcel of what they were down with. And on top of that, Abu Khadija has a lecture on YouTube. You go listen to yourself. Abu Khadija has a lecture on YouTube where, or not a lecture, but rather a Q&A. Somebody's asking him, what if somebody has these tendencies, blah, 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 blah. Abu Khadija is telling them to turn them into the police. Why am I saying all this? Because these are the old infiltration tactics, okay? There are some new infiltration tactics coming soon. 1 second, y'all. Let's watch this.
We see clearly in terms of practical application that Daniel seems to have been doing this for the past few years,
1 second, y'all.
or conservative proclivity. Well,
1 second.
strategic information, this individual is refusing to respond to me. I want to show you guys this. It's, again, I'm not saying the guy is a government agent, but it's very strange how these predictions were I'm a government agent. I'll say definitively that this individual is a government agent, but he likes to make claims and accuse Salafi ideology that is in line with the Western life. When Yasir Qadhi has made statements about the Sharia or Islamic law being bizarre, right? And he has cast doubt on certain things, and he's clearly been pushing for the past 15 years, increasingly a more and more modernist agenda. Well, whether they got in his pockets or not officially, they for sure got what they wanted out of him. That much we cannot really question.
Paper gold. You see, black folks are chumps. If America were to tell you to bring all the rocks in this country to her, and she'll give you $1 million for it, you'll do it. And the next day she'll tell you we're using rocks for currencies, chump.